Yes, welcome once again to this wonderful program on behalf of the God's Embassy, or I say Embassy of God in Kiev, Ukraine. And you know, if you've been watching the few programs we've already released, you will see during the interview that Pastor Sunday was able to tell you about his background, how, where he came from a little village called Idomila. I have heard of the name in a book, but I haven't, actually seen the village. Even on the map of Nigeria,
It's not there.
you hardly see you actually see the village. But we thank God from that humble background, he went through a lot of ups and downs, and finally, somehow, God opened the door for him to come to Russia. In reality, he had two options, or three options, either to go to the UK or go to America or Russia. But thank God for the counsel of a man of God from the Deeper Christian Life Ministries who told him that if you go to the West, the temptations are so heavy, but he would prefer you choose Russia. And he chose Russia because God orders the footsteps of the righteous ones. So I want to just, encourage you to stand by, because we're now going to go into his experiences when he finally arrived in Russia. What happened? Did he get involved in a church? Or did he go underground? Or did he, got backsliding like some people would have done? So you know what? Just sit back and enjoy. God bless you as you continue to watch. Welcome to the program again, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Pastor Yemi. Thank you for this time that you have given out to be able to talk to me.
Now, you've finally got a scholarship. You headed straight for Russia. And arriving in Russia, we know that Russia has its own Orthodox Church. And when we say Orthodox Church in Russia, it's much more like the Church of England in England. But then the Church of England, even though it works with the politicians to make things go okay in the nation, but they don't monopolize spiritual power like what happens here.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us about the Orthodox Church, sir?
Well, the Orthodox Church, when I came here first, the Orthodox Church was inactive. The communist people put out all kind of church or religion because they didn't believe there was God. So there was Orthodox Church. There were Orthodox churches, but they were being used as museum of art. So all those drawings and the icons and of Jesus and the disciples, they were bringing people to the church as tourists. So the tourists would come and see church, what church used to look like, and it was their prophecy that at the end of the century, last century, at the end of before the year 2000, that there will be no believers left in their country and in the world, because religion was old-fashioned, and that science is going to disprove religion. That is crazy to believe in God in the 21st century. So they would take people to churches as tourists, but in the evenings, the old people who are dying, the old people who are still believers before the communists came, they will come to church and pray. But while they are praying, tourists, can you imagine, will be taking photographs and going up and down. They say, we allow old people to believe like that because they will soon die, and they are afraid that maybe there is something there. So they were ridiculing the church, mocking Christ. But today, communism is no more, and Christ and his church is advancing with great power. So the persecution that the Protestant churches that you read about, Tortured for Christ and everybody, that they went through, the same Orthodox people went through the same persecutions. They were destroying their temples, their church buildings. They were imprisoning their priests, even though some of those priests were not even born again. But for daring to be a believer, you are confronting it's the Communist Party and the system. So when I came, that kind of situation totally shocked me. I came from a very deeply religious country, Nigeria. So to see that on a Sunday, what people were doing was to go out to the street and play with their dogs, and go strolling with their dogs, and go out and go walking and strolling in the park. That because it was a holiday, a weekend, but nothing reminds you of religion or of God whatsoever. That was such a big shock. I don't know if you can imagine. In England, we could say, okay, people are backsliding and the churches are not active. But imagine a situation when nobody goes to church. And I don't know. You can imagine what this is. A whole country where no churches are. And a few that are like in a city as large as Moscow, maybe they will have just a few churches, but they are like museums, buildings. So people are just going there to see the artworks. So, I mean, it's unbelievable to come to a country and nobody is going to church on a Sunday. So when I saw that kind of situation, I quickly gathered together students who came with me from Nigeria. We were lodged in the hotel in Moscow. So some of them were Muslims, some of them were not Christians, some of them were nominal Christians. But I quickly came to them and I said, hey, I'm a believer and this is Sunday. Let's get together. So we got together with some believers and I started right there. I was only 6 months in the Lord, 6 months as a believer. But we started praying with foreigners. So that was how my underground Christian life began in Russia.
Wow. You know, it's kind of strange what you said before, that the communists believe that after the end of the last century, there will be no more believers in Russia. But now communism is gone and Christ is still there. The same thing is happening in England, in Western Europe now, where the politicians believe that, well, if we manage to, you know, sideline these people, ridicule their religion, make them look useless, it will die away. Yes. And then we have the whole people to ourselves.
The Western people, the humanists are just repeating the same communist patterns. But the communists failed and God is alive. The same thing will happen in Western Europe. They will be gone and we will still be here.
Wow. Then you arrived here, you started that little prayer fellowship and things. So what happened after that? Well, we know that the Berlin Wall came down, but prior to that...
before then, I had a lot of challenges because, for example, in Russia, when you study in the university, you needed to have a Russian partner or a roommate stay with you in your room. So we have 3 or 4 people in the room, and one has to be a Russian. So they were telling us that it's just for us to master the language, that we need to practice the language, and to practice it, you need a Russian-speaking person living with you. But we didn't know. I later on found out on my own that they were actually there to write reports, protocols to the KGB about what each and every student were doing. Wow. So in my own case, even though I was not praying and doing religious observations publicly, but I had the picture of Jesus on my wall, and the guy had written a report to the Communist Party that this guy is religious, and he's put the picture of Jesus in his room. So one day, even though I would go and pray in the toilet under the blanket to hide it, but they came and they were banging on my door one day. I was sleeping in the afternoon and I was saying, hey, what's happening? It's like they were going to knock down the door. So when I opened the door, it was the head of the Youth Communist Party and my school teacher, my class teacher. It was a language school, and then the dean, all of them, all the authority and the leadership of the university, just because of me, because of one picture on my wall, they all came and they started saying, "What is that?" I said, "What this? This is not a what, this is a who. This is Jesus. Everybody knows him all over the world. You don't know who this is? This is Jesus, the Son of God. This is Christian God." Well, they said, "What is that?" I said, "It's not what is Jesus." They said, "Well, we are not religious, and you have come to a country where religion is not tolerated." The Article 35, and they started quoting it for me, that the consequences, you could be sent to Siberia or sent back to Nigeria or in prison. But because this, by just hanging that picture there, that is regarded as religious propaganda. And that even though, I was not talking about religion, but just by it hanging there, that people who are their citizens, who come to the room, they see it. And it means I'm attempting to convert them, so I could be liable to lawsuit. So as they were telling me all that, I felt so much pain for my Lord. I felt so helpless, and I said, "My God, these people are stronger than me, and they are forcing me to deny you and to remove you from the walls of this building that you have created." I felt so bad for God. And I say, how I wish God should just do a miracle or just intervene and just defend himself. Then as I was thinking like that, I heard a voice in my heart that, hey, don't worry. Don't defend me. Don't defend me. Do what they tell you to do. But don't allow them to remove you from my heart. To remove me from your heart. Let them remove the picture from the walls, but don't allow them with their indoctrination to remove me, Christ, from your heart. So I obliged and I removed the picture. Then later on as they went, I began to pray and cry out to God that I will never allow them to remove you from my heart. Then God began to speak to me. The reason I needed to permit this to happen is because if you insist, the consequence will not be good for you. And it will affect the purpose for which I brought you here. If you begin to fight with them, they are going to remove you from the school, send you to prison, or send you back to Africa. And I have a purpose for you here. So don't worry, you still also need to learn from them. So just keep your faith inside. Keep your personal relationship with me. You just obey them. You are a student here. They are your leaders. Just obey. Learn everything and learn as much as possible. You will need it to fulfill your calling.
Wow. Wow, this is serious. My, oh my. I really thank God for your life, because being able to hear from God at that particular time was
I was
very,
only
very crucial.
19 and 6 months in the Lord, but God just came clear for me.
Wonderful. So, so from then on,
So
what
from
now
then
happened?
on, I had to hide my faith. I had to find a way of praying and hiding so that nobody would see me. Now, of course, at this time, I started seeing old believers who came to the country as believers, but they had denied their faith at this time. They had said, you know, when we get back to Africa, or when we get back to Europe, or when we get back to Latin America or Asia, that we will continue to believe, but here it's not possible. So people started smoking, drinking, going about with European girls and all that. And even people I came with who were Christians with me, who were praying with me, they couldn't stand it. But still, God helped me, and I met some believers who were underground like me, praying. They were senior students. Then there were 3 or 4 of them, 2 of them from Nigeria, 2 of them from Kenya, 1 from Congo or Ghana. So that was how we started hiding underground, and that's how we were able to sustain ourselves. Then later on, I became the leader of that fellowship.
So what percentage of Christians from outside Russia would you say when they finally got into Russia backslided? What percentage roughly are we looking at?
It's 98. Almost nobody could withstand it. The pressure every day. I mean, when I go to classes, when the professor got to know that I was a believer, she was so furious, and she said, "You are a disgrace to my class, and that, you know, I'm going to do something about this, and that it's even a greater shame to me that you are the best. I was the best student of our class. You are my best student, and then you believe in God." So they started bringing professors of physics, mathematics, to, you know, prove to us why there was no God and all. You know, they're working on brainwashing you. One of the subjects you needed to pass before you could even get your promotion from class to class every year, you are made and subjected to study scientific atheism. And you needed to pass it. If you don't pass it, no matter what you pass, science or your degree, your profession specialty, you are not moving forward. So you needed to study scientific atheism. You needed to study Marxist and Lenin philosophy. You needed to study, you know, all kind of rubbish that the life and the activities of the Communist Party. So all these were compulsory subjects that were aimed at brainwashing you. So many people couldn't withstand it.
Do you know the same thing is happening in Western Europe now,
Wow.
where you have professors in universities condemning Christians for believing God. They say it openly. They say, you don't tell
say
me
it's primitive.
you're so foolish to believe in
it
those
is.
things.
It says from the Stone Age.
Yeah. And the pressure is mounting on our people, on our children in the schools. And, like in your case, you had to learn about Lenin and all those bits. Now, the real religion that they are forcing
Einstein,
is evolution.
Yeah.
Evolution, they're pushing it through the system, even in the media. When you watch like the BBC, they will bring somebody to come defend evolution, but there's no one to counter it.
Evolution is what was called here scientific atheism. So that is evolution. So we studied it. So that's what I studied. I could do, I passed that subject very well. I could discuss on it up to now. And you needed to pass it. So that was another crisis that I went through because I needed to pass and give this exam and prove scientifically and through evolution that there was no God. So I was at a dilemma. I was saying, God, there is no way I could do this. And God spoke to me again and said, because there were guys who had been sent out of the school because they would not give that exam. They were believers, and they were even not strong believers, just nominal. So they were sending them back to their countries because they would not give that exam. So I said, what should I do, Lord? Then the Spirit of God spoke to me very clearly and said, the things they give you to study, that there is no God, atheism, evolution, because it's a compulsory subject, just swallow the information they give you, but don't digest it. And when exams come, reproduce it for them. Just give it back to them. It doesn't go to your system. Tell them what they want to hear. That was the wisdom God used, and that was how we scaled to.
It's like a computer.
Yes.
Junk in, junk out.
Yes. Don't digest it.
Wonderful. My. So this little group you had, what now happened after that? Did you carry on for so many years? Where was the turning point where the door started opening for your ministry to start?
While we were in that group of fellowship of a few, sometimes six believers underground, God was always speaking to us in the underground church that God will open the door for evangelism in Russia, and that God is going to bring down the iron curtain, and that we should be faithful, just hold on to Him, and that some of us are going to be used in this country to stay back and to do His work and to proclaim, not just to witness the fall, but to see the glory of God in this land. So, but at this time, we were not given we didn't have an opportunity to meet with the Russian underground church. There were also Russians in the underground church, but we couldn't meet them. Can you imagine? I lived in this country for 4 years, and I didn't see any believer, white Russian believer, because they hid them from the society, from the mainstream. They said they were primitive people, so they would not allow them to mix up with civilized people. So they don't allow them to gain admission after high school. High school was compulsory for everybody, but they would just send them to go and study to be cooks or carpenters or just skilled laborers, but not to go to universities or to higher institutions. So they would not even allow them to go into the cities. Mainly they are just in the villages, working the ground or in the farms. They just reduce them. If you're a believer in God, even if you are smart and brilliant and you come to the university, they remove you and just because you have to have recommendation. They don't give you a good job. They will not allow. It's like all doors are all closed at you just because you believe. So we couldn't meet them anywhere. So one day, one of our brothers just incidentally stopped a car. We were looking for a taxi, but this man stopped because he was a believer, because he loved the Christians. He loved the blacks because he had seen the crusade of Bunkie, that there are a lot of blacks coming to the Lord. So he wanted to try. This is another black. Maybe he could be a believer. So he was always picking up foreigners like that to try to see maybe he could fall into a believer. So this day, he happened to pick up one of our guys. And that was how they spoke. And that was, yeah, I'm a believer. And they spoke, do you speak in tongues? That was the question that connected that. Yeah! We couldn't believe it. It was like we were seeing angels. To see Christians, Russian believers. So they would come to the dormitories and the hostels and, whisk us out in the night, or, we'll go secretly to some corners of the city, to where we hide together, pray, and our life took a new dimension when we began to meet with the Russians, because we didn't have access to Russian Bibles. We couldn't preach in their language. We were only studying. We didn't know religious words. So now that we began to meet with the Russians, we started speaking their language, preaching their language, reading Russian Bibles, and things just took a new dimension.
Well, that was Pastor Sunday Adelaja, the senior pastor of the Embassy of God in Kiev in Ukraine, talking about his life, talking about the encounters he had with God and how he established a relationship with God, a relationship that you and I really want to establish as well, so that God can use us in our generation to affect lives. So you can actually order these materials from the website of the Embassy of God, so you can go through them and use them to prepare yourself for your own encounter. God bless you as you continue to love God.